Hello, today I thought I'd show you how to make a lactose and gluten-free chocolate Swiss roll with a coconut cream or coconut chocolate cream filling with some fresh raspberries and some fresh strawberries. So we're going to start off, because we're going to be using egg whites, I just always like to clean my bowl first. It's an important thing to do to make sure that there is no traces of fat in my bowl or on my whisk, because if there are, the egg whites won't whip up as best as they can. Sometimes they won't even whip up at all if there's too much fat. So all I use is a white distilled vinegar, and I just pop it on a piece of kitchen roll. And I start with my bowl and just give it a good old wipe. And if you've seen any of my videos before, you will have seen me do this before as well. So that's just making sure that I've got all the fat from using things like butters and things like that previously in the bowls. So that's that done. And likewise, I just like to wipe the whisk just in case. Haven't quite got everything off. We all intend to do it correctly, but sometimes we miss a bit. We're all human, I suppose. Well, I hope we are. Anyway, I then can now attach my whisk to the top, and that's that bit done. Secondly, another thing I always like to do as well is get my pan ready, because when you're making certainly something like a light sponge that has no flour in it and you're using egg whites to aerate it, you need to work quickly because time is not your friend. So I have here ready my baking sheet, which is 25 centimetres by 38 centimetres, and I've cut a piece of baking paper which I'm going to put on the bottom. I don't want to oil the sides or butter the sides or have the baking paper going up the sides, because when you're using baking a flourless cake, as the cake rises it needs something to grab onto, and it grabs onto the sides of the pan, and that's what helps it rise and stay risen. Even though once it's cooked it does deflate, but it will hold slightly where it's crawled up your pan, and hopefully that gives you a much more even bake. So I'm just going to pop that behind me to give myself room to work. So the ingredients we need to make the cake are 6 whole eggs, and I've separated those into whites and yolks. We have 150 grams of castor sugar, 60 grams of cocoa powder, and we need a pinch of salt. We'll begin with the egg yolks. So into my bowl I'm going to put 6 egg yolks, and to my yolks I'm going to add the sugar, and I'm just going to whisk these, not to get air or anything into them, but just until they go slightly paler in colour. I've used large eggs, and as I mentioned in a previous video, a large egg weighs 60 grams. All eggs are graded on their weight. So a large egg is 30 grams for the yolk and 30 grams for the white. So if you only have medium eggs, you can work out the weights of a recipe by multiplying the difference. Now we have, as you can see, it's gone slightly, sorry it's not a glass bowl, but it has gone slightly paler. So that's what you need to do with that. And to that mixture now, I'm going to add the cocoa powder. It's gone nice and pale now. And I'm going to sieve the cocoa powder, because it can be quite lumpy, cocoa powder. So gently. It also goes everywhere, as I'm sure you've all experienced. It's very much like icing sugar, where it's a law unto itself, and it's like seeing through a mist if it goes wrong. And believe me, that's happened. I'm going to gently incorporate that into the egg mixture. It's quite a thick mixture, but we'll soon loosen it now with a bit of egg white. So we'll go over to the egg whites now, and I'm just going to pop a pinch of salt in with the egg whites, and I'm going to mix them very briskly until we get soft peaks. The egg white mixture, when you're not adding sugar, doesn't go quite as white and as glossy and shiny. It's the sugar that does that. So, and as we've added the sugar to our egg mixture instead, our egg yolk mixture, this mixture won't be quite as white and glossy. But it's for the air that we need the whites to make the sponge light and flexible. Not having flour in the sponge helps the sponge be flexible. And the difference with this cake recipe is that you don't have to roll it while it's warm for it to keep its shape. It's a very flexible recipe. And also, I'm making this as a lactose and a gluten-free cake by putting a filling in it that is there's no milk or anything like cream or anything like that. But you can use this particular recipe for the cake to make a normal Swiss roll if you want to and add fresh cream in the centre. So you can adapt it to whatever suits you and your family. As you can see now, the eggs are beginning to thicken up and become nice and frothy and I'm going to stop it there and have a look. Yes. As you can see, it's quite frothy there. Perfect. So I'm going to remove the whisk. And I'm going to add a third of the mixture to my yolk mixture. And I'm going to still use the whisk to try and just pull it through. It'll just help slacken this mixture, which is quite stiff at the moment. You don't have to be too careful because you're just slackening the mixture. And if you lose a little bit of the air, it won't matter. It doesn't matter if you don't quite get all the egg white in this mix because you're going back to mix again. Because I'm going to switch now to my spatula so that I can fold the remaining egg whites in so I can keep the air and make it light and fluffy, the sponge. And then what we're going to do is just gently fold by going underneath. I tend to turn the bowl as I do it. Go underneath and over the top. You'll see that the egg white lightens the mixture, but as you bring the chocolate from the bottom over the top, you can see it's darker, so you know it's not fully incorporated yet. And you mix this until you can't see any white left. You can't see any darker chocolate now in the mixture. Just making sure there's no egg whites as well. We're almost there. Now you need to work quickly now because you don't want all the air to go, so we just literally take our pan, and what I want to do is to quickly decant the mixture into our baking tray, and then I'll just use my palette knife to gently tease it into the corners, and now I'm going to pop it into a preheated oven of 160 degrees for 20 to 25 minutes. I'm just going to tap it, try and level it, give it a little jiggle, and in it goes. Here we have the baked cake, and all we need to do now is to allow this to cool completely. Our cake has now cooled, so what we're going to do is just go around the edge to make sure we loosen it from the tin. And as you can see, because this cake has no flour in it, it's extremely flexible. So we haven't had to pre-roll it while it's warm or anything like that to keep its shape. So I'm going to remove it from the tin, like that. Just pop that in there. And then I'm going to dust the top with some icing sugar so that it doesn't stick to my board when I turn it over to put some filling in the centre. Now you can, if you want to, trim the sides. I'm not going to, and the reason I'm not going to is because the sides are still extremely soft, but it's a preference. With this particular recipe, you don't need to. So I'm just going to turn that over and gently peel off the baking paper. In my bowl, I have 1 cup of coconut cream, but what I wanted to show you was the coconut cream you have to put in the fridge the night before you plan to use it. And what happens is the cream separates from the water in the tin of coconut milk. So by putting it in the fridge, the cream stays on the top in a chunk and the water sinks to the bottom. So if you turn it upside down when you take it out of the fridge, take the lid off, you can pour the liquid out and it leaves you the bottom, which is the cream. Now you can use the liquid in a smoothie or something like that, but all we require today is the cream. So we're going to pop that into our bowl. I'm going to add 2/3 of a cup of icing sugar. This particular cake is gluten and lactose free, and that's why I'm using coconut milk and not fresh cream. Obviously you can make the same cake and you can add fresh cream as your centerpiece, as your filling, but this is for a special friend of mine who happens to be lactose and gluten free. So I'm making a cake for her. So that's our icing sugar, and I'm also going to put about 5 or 6 tablespoons of cocoa powder. Again, I can't use ordinary chocolate because a lot of chocolate has milk solids in it, so I'm using cocoa powder. You don't have to do all 6 tablespoons. It's anything really from about 4 to 6. So it's a personal preference of yours as to how much you put in. What I'll do is I'm going to put about 4 in, and then I shall see how it looks. And last but not least, I'm going to add 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract. Give this a little mix first because it's so much powder. If I put the beaters in there, it's going to be all over me before we know it. So I'm just going to mix this in gently with my spoon, and then I'll put the beaters in when I've got a little more control. Actually, it's well incorporated without the beaters, so maybe I didn't need those after all. There we go. So I'm just going to have a little taste. Personally, I don't think it needs the extra cocoa powder, but feel free to taste it yourself. If you feel you want to add that a little bit extra, please do. So now I am going to place this on top of the cake. And spread it. I always like to leave a little bit of room. I don't do it too thick on the end because by the time you've rolled it, it sort of bunches up in the end there from the pressure of pushing it through. I will put a little bit. I was leaving a little of this to put on the top, but maybe I've got a little too much just to hold some strawberries in place. And I've also got some fresh raspberries which I have washed and let dry on paper towels so that their juices are not running. Just putting a few along the edge here so you will see them when you roll it up, so that you know that there are raspberries in it. Right, this is where hopefully it all doesn't go wrong because this is the actual rolling now. I have got, because as I say this is a gift for somebody, I've just put some baking paper on the bottom of this. It's actually a container to carry a cake, so it's about the right size for this cake. So what I'm going to do is just gently fold this, and it will crack. It's the nature of the cake, but it looks amazing when it does. And you just roll it as carefully as you can, like this. And what I'm going to do is try and pull to make sure that we have the seam, if you like, at the bottom. I'll just slide it forward ever so slightly, like that. So there's our cake. As you can see, it has got a few little cracks in it, but I don't think that matters in the slightest. Put a little bit more icing sugar on the top. What I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer that now to my cake carrier. If you take a strawberry and take a sharp knife, and what you need to do is you just need to make small incisions quite close together, right through to the bottom, as if you were splitting an onion. And then what you can do is you can just fan the strawberry out like that, and it looks rather pretty. And I'm going to use just a little bit of the chocolate there, hopefully to stop it from moving. Not a lot, just a little. And there you have it. It's gluten and lactose free. It's a Swiss roll with a coconut chocolate cream filling with raspberries in the centre and strawberry decoration on the top. I hope you'll try this. I hope you enjoy it. Until the next time, see you soon.